And greetings from Bangkok officially to everyone and to our ASEAN colleagues who join us from abroad today. Welcome to the ASEAN Bio-Circular Green Economy Knowledge Sharing Series webinar. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand is pleased to host this webinar in collaboration with the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, as well as the ASEAN BCG Network and the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue. For those of you who join us in the introductory session, welcome back. And for those of you who join us new in this second session, this is the second of our 5 series session, and we will be focusing on the agricultural sector in ASEAN. To start off today's session, I would like to start by relay a video message from Her Excellency Ms. Usana Piranon, Director General of the ASEAN Affairs Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, for her opening remarks.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to welcome you all to the second of a 5-session webinar on the ASEAN Bio-Circular Green Economy Knowledge Sharing Series. Thank you for joining us. Building on the momentum from the introductory session on 14 March this year, where the concept and practical application of the BCG economy model was presented, this second session aims to provide participants with further understanding on how BCG can be applied in relation to the agricultural sector. Participants will also gain insights and learn best practices in smart farming and sustainable agriculture from experts from New Zealand and Switzerland, 2 of ASEAN's long-standing valuable partners. I thank our co-host, the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue, and the ASEAN Network on Bio-Circular Green Economy for their continued support to the series. I would also like to extend, on behalf of the host, my sincerest appreciation to our distinguished speakers from New Zealand and Switzerland for their contribution. Distinguished participants, for ASEAN, agriculture is a way of life and a backbone of socio-economic development of many countries. It forms the basis of many cultures and traditions, provides the source of food and livelihoods for millions of families, and supplies raw materials for industries and services. In 2021, the sector employs between 25 to 35% of the workforce in Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, and represents an important source of export earnings that support economic development for many countries in the region. However, the agriculture sector is facing numerous challenges. Quality and quantity of natural resources are diminishing, while demand for agricultural products keep rising. There is also increased pressure on farmers as impacts of natural disasters and climate change threaten productivity and food security. To overcome these challenges, there is a defined need for ASEAN to recalibrate policy frameworks and rethink farming practices that can meet the needs of present and future generations, ensure the efficient production of high-quality products in a way that protects the environment, and improve the economic conditions of farmers and local communities. In other words, ASEAN needs sustainable agriculture. It is encouraging to see this objective incorporated into the strategic plan of ASEAN cooperation in food, agriculture, and forestry 2016 to 2025, and a number of activities have been conducted to this end, including the establishment of the ASEAN Climate Resilience Network to deal with climate change issues in the food and agriculture sector. As ASEAN coordinator on sustainable development cooperation, Thailand hopes to be a part of this engine driving forward such vision and cooperation. The BCG model can contribute to sustainable agricultural practices through the concept of less for more and accelerate the advance of agriculture 4.0 by placing emphasis on innovation and technology while ensuring standards for high quality and safety. At the same time, we hope to bridge the knowledge gaps by exploring synergies and enhancing engagements with ASEAN external partners whose experiences and best practices can offer valuable capacity building tools for ASEAN member states, as well as open doors for further collaboration. Excellencies, distinguished participants, in closing, I would like to once again thank New Zealand and Switzerland for their contribution to this webinar, which adds to the growing partnerships between ASEAN and the two countries. Both New Zealand and Switzerland have championed sustainable agriculture, not only in the use of advanced technologies and innovations to increase production efficiency, but also in ensuring that these practices yield concrete benefits to farmers and the environment. These unique experiences will undoubtedly provide excellent food for thought for ASEAN policymakers, private sectors, and practitioners in this field. I'm confident that this webinar will be a great opportunity for all participants to learn and exchange ideas to scale up sustainable agriculture practices across the region. Our concerted efforts are among the best guarantees for the realization of the ASEAN community that is competitive, inclusive, resilient, and leave no one behind. And I thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for the video message. Ladies and gentlemen, as the director mentioned, today we have the honor to welcome a lot of distinguished distinguished speakers, not only from Thailand, but also all the way from New Zealand and Switzerland as well. Before we start the presentation by our speakers today, I would like to provide some two important housekeeping informations for you. Firstly, time for Q&A will be provided after each session. And should you wish to make questions or comments, please feel free to use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen, or put your question in the chat box, and one of our administrator will facilitate the questions and comments for you. Please also introduce yourself when making the questions and comments so that we know a little bit of your background. And secondly, all presentation materials today will be made available for participants, and the link to download the presentations will be sent to participants' registered email addresses after the webinar today. Now, I would like to start today's presentations by welcoming our first speaker, Dr. Pongthai Thaiyotin, Director of the Bureau of Agriculture Economics Research, Office of Agricultural Economics, Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives of Thailand, who will kindly lay the groundwork for us in understanding the rationale and objectives and also potential contribution of the bio-circular green economy model in promoting sustainable agricultural practices. May I now invite Dr. Pongthai for the presentation, please. Dr. Pongthai.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for inviting me to join this webinar. Today, I have a presentation to you. Let me share the screen, please. Okay. Due to my presentation has a lot of context, but I will try my best to summarize the idea of BCG economic model that Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperative of Thailand adopted and try to move forward this economy into agricultural sector in Thailand. Today, I have 5 major topics. We will discuss about what is the BCG economic model framework on agriculture, and what is the background and driving mechanism of BCG economic model in Thailand. And I will explain to you about the guideline for driving agricultural sector by using BCG economic model and sharing to you some idea about the BCG value chain or agriculture, and finally we will discuss about the pilot projects in Thailand. So before we deeply in the details, I would like to remind you again that when we are talking about the BCG model in agriculture, what is the key issue of this BCG? For bioeconomy, we think that it is really useful for agriculture development because we hope that bioeconomy will help the farmer to have the good opportunities to increase their agricultural products value by using value creation thinking. And in terms of production, in this bioeconomy, we will promote how the farmer use the modern technologies and innovation in their farm. And when they have the products, how they can increase value added by using innovation processing and add up the value added in agricultural products. That is the key concept for bioeconomy in agriculture. In terms of circular economy, it is mean that how the farmer can utilize their resources by maximize profit for them by make them to use the resources and reduce the pollution from their farm by bring their residual to make the fertilizer, that is for example, and make them to have the zero waste in their farm. And for the green economy, it's mean how we make the farmer to adopt the friendly, environmentally friendly farming in their production. This is I think this is a key idea to bring BCG model into agricultural sector. In July 2021, Thai government has announced BCG economics model as the national agenda. In this operational plan, there are 4 strategies to move forward BCG model in Thailand. The first strategy will explain about how to create sustainability and balancing between utilization and conservation. For the second strategy, is talk about how to make the community local economy to have the strengthening by using their own capital, their advantage of their identities to create the local economies by using modern technologies and value added in their products. And the third strategy talking about how to BCG model to enhance our industry in Thailand, especially in the new S-curve industry, that we can adopt the BCG model in this industry. For example, food industries, clean energy industry, and biochemical industry, for example. And the fourth strategy is talking about how to strengthening the ability to respond to global change. In the operational plan of BCG, there are 11 fields to implement, but the third field, agriculture, is very closely with my responsibility. So today I would like to emphasize to you how Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperative of Thailand adopt BCG model into agriculture development policy. As I mentioned before that after we have the operational plan of BCG, Ministry of Agriculture has bring that strategy into the principle and make a guideline to enhance BCG economics to implement. I would like to say that in the guideline of BCG economic model under Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperative, we have 4 issues to implement. The first issue is how to conserve and utilize agricultural resources efficiently, especially how to balancing between utilization and conservation of agricultural resources. In this issue, we set up the program that we call biobank to preserve the local variety, both of seed, livestock, and fisheries, to keep the biodiversities of varieties, especially in the local varieties. And we also have the program to promote the farmers to preserve and restore their agricultural resources by give them the knowledge to know how to preserve the soil and water in their farm. We also have the project to promote the standard of input factors that the farmer use in their farm. And we have the project about how to stop burning in agricultural land to reduce the pollution from the farm after they are harvested. This is the activity that we have under the first issue. For the second issue, we promote the modern agriculture in smallholder farmers by using that we call large-scale farmer policy to enhance the farmer to do their farm together by sharing modern agriculture mechanization and to sell the products together. And then we promote the farmer to have the knowledge to analyze the soil condition and use the appropriate level of fertilizer in their farm that we call precision farming. And we have the information on present land utilization we call AgriMap, which is this AgriMap is contain a lot of information about the land suitable for crop in each areas. And in this issue, we also promote the farmer to get into the standard that we call GAP, Good Agricultural Products. And we set up the traceability system to promote and to make sure that the farm product has meet the high quality. The consumer can trace back by using application or internet to get into the traceability system. That is the project that we have done under the second issue. We also have the processing process that promote the farmer to have ability to do some processing to increase their value added into their agricultural products. That's the project that we have done under this second issue. For the third issue, we try to promote the BCG model into the farmer. We have the projects to set up the training program to the farmer to understand what is the principle of BCG model, such as how to preserve the environmental, how can they use the modern technology in their farm, how can they get into the standard system, and how can the farmer do the farming by adopt the environmentally friendly system, something like that. Moreover, we also have the program to make the government officer to realize about how to bring BCG into policy development. So the knowledge of BCG to the people is a key issue in this development. And finally, the fourth issue is we're talking about how to develop infrastructure and facility to support BCG model movement, such as we develop big data in agriculture sector. We have the committees to make a policy to promote the BCG in agricultural sector. We also have a working group to study how to improve our regulation or law that may be outdated, something like that. And finally, we develop infrastructure, especially in irrigation system, laboratory, and logistic system to support agricultural sector and adopted BCG economic model ideas. For this slide, I would like to tell you that I would like to summarize how Thailand moved forward BCG into agricultural sector by adopting the idea of value chain. Both BCG, we need to develop from upstream to downstream. For BCG in agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture of Thailand responsible for upstream. especially to the farmer. But in the midstream or downstream, we have collaboration with Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Commerce to promote the BCG idea into processing process and into the market as well. Finally, I would like to share you about what is the pilot projects that we have done nowadays. Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperative, we set up the pilot projects by adopting BCG model idea into 5 provinces. And in each 5 provinces, they select the agricultural products to implement BCG. For example, in Lampang province, the north of Thailand, they select rice and bamboo as the pilot projects. In Khon Kaen, northeastern part, they select sugarcane and mulberry seeds. For the east region, at Chanthaburi province, they select durian, mangosteen, and swimming crab as the pilot project for their communities. And the Pathalung in the southern part of Thailand, they select rice. And for the west region, Ratchaburi, they select Swiss coconut, sugarcane, swine, dairy cattle, vegetable, giant freshwater prawn as the pilot projects products. So in these 5 provinces will be the pilot project that we adopt BCG model to implement in the area. However, I would like to share you that nowadays we expand this BCG model in agriculture into every province in Thailand. Every 76 provinces has already analyzed the key commodities, the key agricultural commodity in their province, and select the major products to adopt the BCG model in agriculture in the areas. So before I ending my presentation, I would like to say that BCG model will be the benefit instrument to improve our agricultural sector in Thailand. And we hope that this BCG model will help us to make the farmer have the better life and leave no one behind. Thank you very much.
ขอบคุณค่ะ Thank you very much, Director Pongthai. May I open the floors for some questions and answers if anybody has one? You may raise your hand or put the question in the chat box as well. Alrighty, if there's no interest right now, in the interest of time, I would like to take you to the next presentation directly so that we don't waste too much time. And I think as highlighted succinctly by Director Pongthai, the BCG model puts strong emphasis on promoting efficiency as well as creating opportunities for farmers throughout the supply chain from the upstream down to the downstream. And I can see no better examples of this in real life than the next speaker that I would like to introduce to you, who joined exactly this vision and turned his passion in agriculture into a thriving and sustainable business. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mittanai Sathawaramani, CEO of SV Group, who will share with us today his perspectives and also experiences in smart and sustainable farming in Thailand. Mr. Mittanai, floor is yours. Thank you.
So, okay. Thank you for the introduction. I'm gonna share my screen. Sorry, let me. Okay, I got it. All right. Can you see the screen coming up?
Yep, we can see this the presentation
Okay.
well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, let me introduce myself very fast. My name is Port. Actually, my full name is Mittanai Sathawaramani, but my nickname is Port. And okay, let me begin. And I'm actually doing this whole business with my brother. His name is Peter, who is not here today. But so we call ourselves a Coral Brothers. My name is Port, and this is Peter. Port and Peter. Well, to begin the session, I would like to slowly introduce my background. I graduated from civil engineering from the University of Wisconsin at Madison back in 2008, and I came back to Thailand in 2009. And that was the very beginning of my agricultural world. When I got back here in 2009, my family has a business, and we ran an organic fertilizer business starting from 2006. And then when I graduated, I came back and I help out with the family business, and it's located in Ratchaburi province, 2 hours to the west of Bangkok. I did that for about 5 years. Well, throughout the 5 year time, I was able to travel throughout Thailand. We began by selling to only four provinces in the west: Ratchaburi, Nakhon Pathom, Suphanburi, and Kanchanaburi, right? And I got to meet, and after 5 years, I was able to expand from 4 provinces to 60 provinces and 3 other countries. Well, but anyway, to wrap it short, after 5 years time of full travel and meeting lots and lots of farmers, my business was out of business through many competition and many things. So we decided to close down the company in 2012 roughly back then, and that was actually one of the best thing that actually ever happened to me, and I will tell you why. Well, this is me when I was 23, and in the first 5 years when I was traveling around, I learned my farming and agricultural knowledge based by meeting a lot of farmers, right? When my factory was out of business, the thing that got me and turned my interest into what was after meeting so many farmers, farming has now become my passion, and everything related to agriculture, because I have met so many farmers, more than 1 or 2,000 over the years, and then it has slowly become my passion to do something that actually matter to them. Well, so this was my new dream in 2012 of my personal dream was to make all farmers truly and sustainably happy. But that was back in 2012. Well, after running the organic fertilizer for 5 years, and I made a mess out of it, and the business gone wrong, and then we closed them down. So now this was my dream, but I began my business by asking this question. So what if I were to actually make this dream come true? How do I really do that and not going out of business again like my previous factory? Let me begin with the pain points worldwide, as many of you like may know, right? This to wrap this up, by 2050, the population on Earth is going to increase from 7 billion to 9 billion. From 7 billion to 9 billion in 30 years time. So that means like more consumers, right? But more consumers doesn't mean more growers. I show you records. These are the records of like numbers of farmers slowly declining throughout the world. And this is in Thailand. This is only from 1980 to 2007, and this is like every decade. Every decade, the number of like farmers in Thailand decreased by 10%, and probably a lot more now. Yeah. Well, now we have more consumers, right? And then we have a lot fewer growers or like farmers. And what type of food would the upcoming generation prefer? Because now like the world is like changing. This is the worldwide market for like organic agriculture. As you can see, from in like 10 years time, the number of like organic farming or like related has grown dramatically worldwide. Yeah. Well, so to sum it up now, like we have higher population growth, we have fewer farmers, and the new generations of like of like consumers are going to consume something better, like less chemical, safer for their children. Now I probably believe that there would be no one who would want to have their children eat rice who use a lot of like herbicide, for like example. And this will probably continue to increase in the years to come. Well, what are the key signals that this actually matter? This is according to the Ag Funder venture capital, who invested heavily in like agriculture and like food technology. They are saying, this is back in 2020, and I think now like agri-food tech is no longer a niche. It has become a medium-sized, deal-sized growth signal, majority of first wave innovations. So we have already passed the stage of many questions of like whether is all the farming and consumers eating better going to like grow. Now it has become clear that now we are in the middle stage of growing. And these are the numbers of, as you can see here, the yellow represents like upstream investment, and the blue color represents downstream like investment. These are the not the like number of venture capital who actually invested in upstream and downstream. If you can see, from since 2014, the number of investment money who actually go to like downstream is lower than like downstream like investment for 7 consecutive years, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And starting into 2020, it was the first year that the investment money went to upstream business more than downstream. So what do this number tell? It tells that the investors are now like predicting that they have been investing a lot in like downstream business, like, which I'm going to explain like in a bit, right? Like they have been investing in a lot in business that would serve the world, like make the consumer buy stuff easier, blah blah blah. But now they realize that, well, now not enough investment is going through the upstream like business, who will actually serve the world, like create more rice, generating a better food to the downstream, right? And here are the list of agri-food tech category definition. The yellow color is like upstream and the blue color is downstream. So as you can see here, the blue color has been investing a lot in this category, from like restaurant, marketplace, e-grocery, home cooking tech, online restaurant, and you can see that this is downstream like technologies, right? So of course they would definitely need something to feed this downstream. And for the examples of like downstream category are like ag, biotech, farm management software, sensing and IoT, farm robotics, midstream technology, innovative food like plant-based protein, for examples. Well, and how do I use all these pain points and the future trend to redesign my whole organization to actually achieve my dream and not going out of business again? I came up with 4 brands, and of course, like each brand came up at a different time. But I'm not going to talk into those details now. I'm going to explain to you each of them are and how do I put them together. Starting with like SB Biotech. SB Biotech is the I call it the company that we invested a lot in biotechnology. So we call ourselves like the organic plant protection, and our mission here is like to reduce the cost of organic farming so the world can have access to safer food at an affordable price. Why do I make this business? Because like I believe that if we talk to a lot of like farmers now who are doing, hey, and you ask this question, do you want to do organic farming? Of course, everyone are interested in like organic farming, but there are one major obstacles is that everybody would tell you that, well, the cost of organic farming is so high and the yield to the organic farming is very low, so it's not worth it to the revenue they are going to generate from like growing organic farming, right? So that would be our mission, to come up with the solution that would reduce the cost of organic farming dramatically in the years to come. Of course, we are not doing the best we can now, but that's our goal. So what do we do? For example, we are doing everything bio, like bio insecticide, bio pesticide, bio stimulant, bio surfactant, for examples. And these are the packaging of our products that we are trying to make the farmers know that by doing farming, it doesn't have to be boring. It could be stylish, could be a career that you could be proud of. So this is what we do. That's the first company. No, that's the first brand. The second brand, we just opened a new brand this year. It's called GoTech. And what GoTech is, we are calling ourselves a smart farming assistant platform. What do? It starts with our mission first. Well, I personally have been meeting with a lot of like farmers, right? And then I have been thinking about how to really make them happier. And I found out that, well, to make it simplest and best in simplest solution, it is easier to make them happiest if I am able to assist them in making more money in their pocket, in their family for them. Like they would have more cash for their kids' education, to not be in debt higher, for example. So our goal of this second technology company is to make high profit farming really, really easy for everyone. So my vision is like for the farmer to have watching Netflix at home and doing farming at the same time, something like that. And this is what we are developing, and some of them are already launched now. Is for example, the first one, we are doing the smart farming e-commerce where farmers can come in and can shop any fertilizers or pesticides that are actually suitable to their problems. The second one is we call it Go Camp. Go Camp is to assist farmers who are actually do not know what is wrong with their crops, and they can just like scan the crops disease, and then it would tell them what would be the best solution or response that they should take in action before the insects like spread throughout like their field. And the last one is like farm management app, where each farm can use this to better to the end goal of like farm management is to make the precision farming possible. Yeah. So this is what we are developing right now. Then a lot of them are going to come out this year. And the third brand is called Chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, this is our vision. This is a bit different. Chlorophyll is we are an attraction, we are a farm located in Ratchaburi province. I forgot to mention the first brand here as we Biotech. Now we are and GoTech, we are a community. Now we have about 150,000 farmers in like our community. And then the Chlorophyll is a farm, right? And then but here I'll show you. We call this is our model. We want to be a farm that had goodness and harvest inspiration. So we create this farm where like people can come to like our farm, and then we actually grow melons, and we are actually famous for like growing melons, right? But we never call I never told any of our customers that we grow melon. We actually grow inspirations through melons that we actually do. Yeah, so that's a different context of how people perceive in our farm. I show you this is our farm. Can you please ขออนุญาตรบกวนทีมงานช่วยเปิดวิดีโอให้หน่อยได้ไหมครับ Yeah, I'll show you. This is a brief video of like Chlorophyll. Thank you very much. Let me share slide again. Okay. Well, that was Chlorophyll, and then we opened in 2015, and now we are becoming one of the most visited farms in Thailand. Now we have roughly about 400,000 visitors per year. Yeah, that's almost 500,000, and we aim to become 1 million visitors per year place in 3 years time, hopefully. Okay, and the last brand is called Pante. Pante is show you. Pante is a plant-based food brand. We are actually no. Panda is a plant-based protein brand, and our mission here is that like we say we do not just provide food, we save life to many aspects. Like for example, one scoop of like our proteins equal to like this. Like if every scoop that you actually eat our protein, it would save like 0.044 chickens. Yeah, and it would increase like 5.4 trees, for example. And then our key value proposition of why people would consume our plant-based protein is that we have three things. The first one is that it is extremely delicious. The second one is it is stylish plant protein. And the last one is that it is solution by nutritionists. These are the samples of what we do for the last brand. This is all plant-based products. And this is for example, this is plant-based protein, right? And then actually one of them, the Dutch chocolate flavor, we are the only plant-based protein that got this Best Taste Award from Belgium in 2021. And we are actually currently the only brand of plant-based protein that received this award throughout the world. Yeah. And the second collection is like plant-based protein plus collagen, and this one is like plus superfood. And we keep releasing many products. For example, this is like plant-based protein ice cream. Well, those were 4 brands, right? SB Biotech, GoTech, Profile, and the last one is Panda. How do we use this pain point to redesign my whole organization? You remember this category definition, right? And map, and I have these companies, so I map them to this category. So and then I am able to do the connection with so many companies. For examples, Chlorophyll, now we are expertise in creating value. We were able to sell our melon to 15,000 baht per melon before. We are able to do a lot of branding, repackaging. So that's our brand strength. What if we are able to buy products back from our customer here, from our farmers that use SB Biotech or GoTech service, and then we redesign them like Japanese level packaging, and then we sell them with the story. So that would allow all the farmers to not having to grow like 100 rice of rice. Maybe they are able to grow 1 rice of rice and turn into a more valuable product, and then they even get more income than they used to just sell rice as a commodity. So that's my mission. And we aim to sell this to like Bangkok, like city people. So we put a coffee in the e grocery categories. What if, and like Panda, we are now #1 best-selling plant-based protein in Thailand. In everywhere we are, on Shopee, on Lazada, and Lemon Farm, and everywhere we are. So by able to innovate a lot of like products using resources from these again, so we can turn a lot of low value materials into a much higher value, which is plant-based, is one of the highest growing trend worldwide. And for example, another example is that like now we are doing the like biotech for like ourselves, right? So when back then when I was selling fertilizer, I would just like produce fertilizer and then go sell to like farmers, right? But now I'm able to come up with the solution with the biotech plus the technology, and we can test it at our farm first, whether to see whether is this going to work or not. Imagine the speed of innovation that my company can come up each day. We can try this new biotech formula, for example, we can create today, right? And then we can try at our farm. If it doesn't work, tomorrow morning we can go back and redefine the like formula again, or improve our IoT that we use in the farm right at the next day. Yeah, something like that. These are different connections. So I'm able to by having this business model, I'm able to from like before, right? Comparing from like before, by selling only fertilizer. I was only able to stay on the upstream side. I just sell fertilizer, and the farmers have they don't actually see like what their future income or anything else rather than like buying my fertilizer, right? But by having this model, now I am actually able to not starting from the farmers, but starting from this side, plantain and coffee, and create more demand, selling more. So we have a higher amount of volume with a much better margin to go back and assist farmers with the right innovation, with the right market, for example, something like that. So if you are, and lastly, before I end my presentation, if you are wondering why I am able to do so many things at the same time, well, right now my company is a place filled with like I call them like Avengers, like from so many fields like biotech technologists to data scientists, food scientists, IoT, and engineering, chef, brand communication, and everyone are here together to, and the best thing of having them is not only because they are so good that of what they do, but I can say that almost 100% of my employees and my teams here, they join us because they are dreamers too. They want to use their ability to something that actually matters to the world. And this is why they resign from all big companies and join our startup. And now from the beginning it was only my personal dream to make them happier, right? But now I have an army of Avengers who gather together to through these 4 brands. I don't know, maybe in the future I'm going to have a lot more brands to fill in like the rest. But now we are as a team, I think we are able to achieve, maybe not, my company might not be able to change the world, but I believe that we are actually able to change one person's world at a time. Yeah, and that is how my own business BCG model hope to achieve in my lifetime. So that's to put a lot of like smiles on a lot of like farmers' faces. Thank you. That would be all. Oh, and this is my personal my contact. In case any of you want to share with me, or we can discuss something further, you can contact me via email and LinkedIn.
Well, thank you very much, ka Kun Mitanai. It is quite inspiring to hear how we turn innovation and technologies into agricultural practices and create sustainable practices, not only for the company itself but also the farmers. I think the very important point is also to create value-added innovation and products from just the natural resources that each farmers have. So I think quite an inspiring and quite a comprehensive the presentation. I was wondering whether there's any questions from the floor at this stage.
Should I stop sharing the presentation?
Oh yes, please. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, just in the interest of time, if we do not have any raised hands or questions at this stage, I would like to skip to our next presentation. Sorry?
Yeah,
Oh,
my
yes.
name is Haryati. Yeah,
Oh, please.
I already typed the question in the chat box.
Oh,
Do you
okay.
want to check it or you want me to read it? Yeah.
Oh, well, now that you have the floor, please feel free to ask.
Let me just straight away ask you a question because we noticed that I noticed that your video, Coro video, you plant a tomato organically. So do you actually encounter any pests or any disease such as a virus, etc.? And if so, how do you solve it? And do you also apply any ecological engineering approach for your pest management? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, we cause the pest, the problems in like our tomatoes. Well, for me, like my bottom line principle for growing organically is the discipline of like my all my team workers, we have a very strict rules that for like example, we like divide the farming area into several areas, right? And then one for example group A of like farmers who work in zone A, during the same day they cannot work in zone A and then move to work in zone B. So I fix them very strictly because like by preventing from them to like spread the disease. But once we actually also face a lot of pest like problem like in the past too. Well, like what I did was actually we changed the crops for like one season, and then we grow something that's not tomato related for like 3 or 4 months, and then we came back to the same area. And normally with the Thailand very hot weather in the greenhouse, it would somehow kill a lot of like disease by 3 or 4 months time. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thank you for the presentation and also the questions from the floor. I would also encourage a lot of ASEAN colleagues that has tuned in with us today to perhaps share your thoughts and your practices in your own country, and also to exchange practices and ideas with our experts today as well. Well, as I mentioned earlier today, not only we have the examples of Thai agricultural business, but we also have the examples and best practices also from our partners, New Zealand and Switzerland. So we would like to take you all on to a virtual visit to New Zealand first, and see how our valuable partners promote smart farming and sustainable agriculture in their respective countries. Today, we have an honor to welcome our distinguished speakers, from New Zealand, who join us today, despite the evening time in New Zealand. I would like to welcome first Dr. Jeremy Smith, Senior Policy Advisor, Ministry for Business, Innovation and Education. Dr. Gary Udi, Specialist Advisor from the Ministry for Primary Industries, and also Dr. Callum Eastwood, Senior Scientist from the Dairy Industry Organization, Dairy New Zealand. So over to you, Team New Zealand.
Okay, I will start. So I'm Gary Udi. Just my background is I am a veterinarian in my original profession, but have a PhD in genetics and animal development. And have worked in research, commercial sector, and the regulatory environment. I also happen to be a farmer, and I come from 6 generations of farmers in New Zealand over 180 years in both the farming, dairy and meat area and forestry. And I'll forgive my rather stippled look. My lighting level is very low here, so not so good. I will start with just commenting about the previous speaker. I think, if we could inject his enthusiasm and innovation into all of our agricultural industry, we would double our economy. I think he's brilliant. So on that note, just New Zealand's agriculture is extensive. We have several sectors, dairy, meat, horticulture, seafood, forestry, apiculture or honey, and wine, to name the main ones. Yet we only have a population of 5 million people. So we do actually export 90 to 95% of what we produce. The first thing that I'll share with you is we have a short video which is produced by our the Global Research Alliance, and it's talking about mitigation of climate change, and it's farmers talking about what they're doing on their farms. Part of the main purpose also of sharing it is just to give you a view of New Zealand agriculture, and so it shows some of those sectors that I mentioned. And we will follow that with Dr. Jeremy Smith talking about New Zealand's support for agriculture. I will talk about the programs and support for innovation and sustainability from MPI, and Dr. Callum Eastwood from Dairy NZ will talk about productivity, sustainability in the dairy industry. So if we can go to that video now, can you share that for us?
The improvements that we've made on farm have absolutely delivered to our bottom line. We find that our cows are more efficient. We find that we're producing more milk and that we're able to breed better animals, which have both short and long-term impacts. We find that we're growing more pasture of a higher quality. We find that our soils are delivering for us and we're continuing to be able to drive down our environmental and our greenhouse gas emissions because of that.
In this series, Reducing While Producing, we take you on a virtual farm tour to look at how the New Zealand agricultural sector is responding to the challenges of climate change and working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by increasing on-farm efficiency and producing more sustainably. We look at how farmers can collaborate with policymakers, scientists and industry.
I think at the heart of what we've tried to do in New Zealand is base our policies on a climate goal. It's not just a matter of reducing emissions, it's containing global warming.
Farmers are very adaptable people and we're always confronting challenges, but we need a pathway to recognise, firstly, what are our emissions? What's my number out here when I look at my livestock component and the methane emissions? He Waka Eko Nawa will give me, as a farmer, some tools to use so that I can identify that, and then we can look at mitigation strategies and ways that we can start to ramp back those emissions.
We need to take a collective view and look at the natural resource.
The collaboration between researchers and farmers and policymakers is absolutely critical going forward. It's something I feel really passionate about because there are intricacies in terms of how decisions and regulation are able to be implemented on farm.
It's very important for Māori to be part of the equation around greenhouse gases. It's very important to have that engagement and that political engagement.
If we want to get people together, the first thing I think is that people have to leave egos at the door, because sometimes I think scientists think they know everything. Sometimes I think policy people think they know everything. And sometimes I think farmers think they know everything. So, if we can at least be open and willing to listen and try to understand, I have no doubt we'll get to the right answers.
We look at the need to innovate and take a science-led approach to our climate challenges.
It was science here in the Taupo catchment that finally got farmers to truly understand the impact of their farming systems.
You make far greater progress when you understand what the problem is and it's been happening on your farm. The more we can improve the water holding capacity of the soil, the more we can store water naturally through rainfall. We know with the climate change modelling that we are probably going to see less natural rainfall. So our ability to capture and store as much of that as possible in our soil will be key going forward.
I'd suggest we've doubled our yield over a 30-year period and reducing our nitrogen inputs from approximately 230 kilos of nitrogen down to 150. Of all my things I've been involved in my farming career, this is the most exciting thing I've been involved with, how we're producing more with less.
So plantain is a really interesting species. Effectively, at the end of the day, we see a lower environmental footprint because we see lower nitrate leaching and possibly lower nitrous oxide, which is one of the greenhouse gases, from when plantain is grown and fed to animals.
So the idea of growing a crop such as fodder beet, but then growing that with Italian ryegrass during the wintertime is the ideal benefit, because as soon as the fodder beet is eaten by the animals, the Italian ryegrass will come and it will soak up all of the nitrogen from the urine patches that the animals have deposited on the soil. That's one very good way of minimising nitrogen losses.
We look at how the agriculture sector has come together to enable farmers to be change makers.
Somebody once said to me, the best way for other farmers in other countries is to learn is either come here and see what you're doing, or else go to that country, because farmers will believe farmers and they'll look at what other farmers are doing.
It's good having a fresh set of eyes on farm, because I've lived here all my life and
I don't necessarily see things. I see things in a different light, where a bit of fresh set of eyes coming on can quite easily pick out something that we might need to change or have a different point of view on.
We've always identified that scale is really important for any operation. And as an individual, we struggle to get that scale. So we've collaborated with other farmers to form that scale to give us enterprises that are fit for what the requirements are. I'd rather be working with 12 farmers close together than 212. And I think that's the unique part about our irrigation scheme. With 20 farming families, you know, we're very close and we work really well together.
We've had fantastic support from our local regional council in the SLUI program. We've reduced our livestock emissions since 1990 by 6%. When you bring the trees into the picture as well, the overall reduced by 31%.
Both Mick and I, we're very passionate about strong rural communities and how we look after each other. And that's, you know, economically, socially, culturally and environmentally. And we see that playing out just in our small valley with a community care group now, where like-minded neighbours are all really keen to see a lighter touch and help work to improve our environment, and collectively doing that with a bit of fun.
So it's really important that we are working quickly with farmers so that we can help tailor any solutions so that they'll actually work on farm.
I think there's a raft of learning for us all to understand, and the more we can understand that, the more we can start to solve some of these problems of greenhouse gases and carbon.
The New Zealand agricultural community has come together to collectively rise to the challenge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and achieve our climate goals. What could collaboration, innovation, and the right support enable you to achieve? Join the discussion.
Okay, thank you for that. So that was a good snapshot of agriculture in New Zealand, as well as talking about a specific topic, so greenhouse gas mitigation. So I'll just share my screen and hand over to Jeremy. Just go through these.
Mr. Jeremy, can you maybe unmute your microphone? Because we cannot hear your voice.
You okay to go, Jeremy? I can't see you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Brilliant.
We can hear you.
So I represent the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, and one of our key roles is to act as stewards of the New Zealand research, science and innovation system. So from a policy perspective, we recognise that it's really important for innovation, innovative approaches and technologies to have real impact. We need to create an enabling regulatory and policy environment. This includes in the agriculture sector.
Jeremy,
this is outlined in the.
If you've got a bit of an echo there. I don't know whether you can adjust your microphone.
I can switch them over to my other one.
You might have two. Have you got two microphones running?
A little bit better.
A little bit better. See how that goes.
Okay. So we've recently released our emissions reduction plan this week, which outlines several new policies that specifically aid the agriculture sector to becoming more sustainable. So this includes the establishment of
Jeremy,
a new.
We still have the same problem. It sounds like you have got a second microphone there, and they're bouncing off each other.
Is that a bit better?
No, it's the same. Technology, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I could go a bit further, and if it's still really echoey, maybe Gary, you could just talk as well.
That's very echoey. It's worse than it was. So maybe if you get closer to your microphone.
This microphone. Is this one Gary?
It's way worse.
Because of the signal, may I suggest that you try turn off the camera instead?
Sure.
Just
How's that? Is that a bit better?
It might be a bit better. Can you talk again?
Yeah, sure. Is this coming through all right?
It's a little better.
Okay.
We can probably run with it. I think people can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry about that, everyone. So the new emissions reduction plan, which has been published this week, outlines the establishment of a new Centre for Climate Action on Agricultural Emissions. It's put in place incentives for on-farm adoption of new technologies and also expanding advisory services for farmers. In addition to this, the agriculture sector is supported through a variety of ways in New Zealand. And the next slide shows some of the public research organisations that actually support the wider agriculture sector and also the BCG agenda. So we have AgResearch, which is very much focused on the research around New Zealand pastoral services. Land Care Research, which is looking at the environment and sustainability of our land. And we saw representatives from some of these organisations in the previous video. In addition to these public research organisations, the next slide points to a few of the targeted initiatives that exist, including some of our strategic science investment funds that look specifically at land-based ecosystems and enhancing land use, looks at plant-based foods and agri-food production processes. We've got the Sustainable Food and Fibre Futures Fund, which Gary, I think, is going to talk to a bit more in detail in a bit. We've got the New Zealand Agriculture Greenhouse Gas Research Centre, as well as some of our national science challenges, which is trying to pool our research system to really target some key challenges, including ones that are looking at production and productivity of New Zealand's primary sector. In addition to these targeted supports, there are also some of the broader-based supports, which you can see on the next slide. These include the Bioprocessing Research Alliance, which actually looks at how we can turn some of the biological waste streams into high-value products. It includes incubator programs to support new agri-tech startup companies, our agri-tech industry transformation plan, which is setting out a series of actions to look at the long-term transformation of our agricultural sector, as well as our contestable science funds, which have gone towards supporting a lot of different agriculture initiatives, including looking at dairy cattle genetics. So I'll pass you back to Gary to talk a bit more about our Ministry for Primary Industries.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was great. As Jeremy alluded, we have quite a number of organisations as well as government groups working towards supporting agriculture with innovation and sustainability. And I'll just touch a little bit on what Ministry for Primary Industries is doing in that area. Across the government sectors, our Prime Minister at the end of 2019 launched this strategy for improving our economic potential or accelerating it, as well as focusing on key things like sustainability and productivity. And it's called Fit for a Better World, and it's designed to improve our agriculture for the future. You can find the document on the MPI website if you go and have a look. So in terms of implementation and who's involved, it's a whole of government initiative, and it involves Ministry for Primary Industries, Ministry for Business, Innovation and Education, Ministry for the Environment, as well as our organisations involved with trade and export. So New Zealand Trade and Enterprises, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. It's focused on fostering public-private partnerships, and so our Indigenous people, Maori, alongside research institutes, industry sector bodies, and government working together to make change in agriculture. And it involves co-investment as well. So the programs that MPI funds and many other programs that are funded have joint funding, and often industry is providing 20 to 60% of that funding for those programs. So that means that they have buy-in to achieving the goals and vested interests. So if we look at partners, as I just mentioned on the right-hand side here, so government agencies that I have just mentioned, Crown Research Institutes, so we have organisations like AgResearch and others, Maori agribusinesses who are trying to develop their businesses in the agricultural sectors, and our core food and fibre industries. So as I mentioned at the beginning, dairy, sheep, beef, horticulture, forestry, wine, and seafood is missing out of there. And we have various groups that are formed to drive some change. So things like the Food and Fibre Partnership, a Maori Primary Sector Forum, and groups involved in thinking, beyond what we do now. So a primary sector think tank to look at where we can head with our agriculture into the future. So the three key elements of Fit for a Better World are productivity, and we have a goal there of an additional $44 billion of export earnings in the next 10 years, and sustainability, and there a goal with 24 to 47% reduction in biogenic methane emissions to below 2017 levels, and a few other goals there as well. And also a big focus on our fresh water and the environment in general, so that we leave our land in a healthier state for the next generations. And inclusiveness, so that's all about people, and that's trying to create more employment for people in the agricultural sectors, 10% more by 2030. So just touching on each of those elements individually, and I won't go into too much detail. I might gloss over a little bit of this. So productivity, key focuses in there are around strategies and plans for all sectors. It mentions things like horticulture and aquaculture in there, but it spans all sectors. And having industry transformation plans, as Jeremy had alluded to, where you have industry involved with research organisations, and aiming to look for new products, new plants, new ways of producing from the land, new strategies for improved agriculture, whether it's dairy or meat or horticulture or other sectors. And also a large focus on a Maori agribusiness extension program, so helping Maori to develop their agribusiness and improve productivity. And we also have in there a continued focus on trade. As I said, we export 95% of our produce, and so that's a big driver for us to look at our markets, our access to markets, our relationships with our partners, and form closer economic partnerships, such as the one that we have with Thai, the Thai NZ CEP. Sustainability, again, focuses on all of our sectors, and ensuring things like forestry, sustainable forestry, sustainable fishing, effective use of fresh water and sustaining our natural water resources and productive land use. And it was mentioned in the video, Hewaka Ekanoa, our primary sector climate action partnership. So growers and farmers, working together to restore and protect and sustain the environment is quite a significant driver in the program. And also looking at resilience in the agribusinesses, the ability of farmers to continue to be sustainable, to continue to have good incomes, and continue to grow their businesses, and be able to cope with the challenges that we have. A lot of our agriculture is really impacted a lot by the environment and the climate, and weather conditions and so on. We have droughts, we have floods and those sort of things. So in trying to increase the resilience of agricultural systems. And the last but not the least is the inclusivity. And really this is a lot about creating jobs in the rural sector and encouraging people to come into the rural sector and have a viable and thriving rural community, and be able to grow a business and grow a livelihood, and includes Maori primary sector development and jobs as well. There are things in there around connecting rural New Zealanders, so things like rural broadband, training, better understanding of finances so that they can run their businesses more effectively, and wellbeing programs for people. Okay. So there are a couple of programs that the major programs within MPI. One we've touched on already, the Global Research Alliance, and you've seen the video around their focus on greenhouse gas emission reduction. And that alliance actually has, I think, now more than 60 countries in the alliance, and a lot of collaboration with our Greenhouse Gas Research Centre. The other area that I'll talk about next is the Sustainable Food and Fibre Futures Fund. So that's monies available for innovative developments in agriculture, for growing agriculture and for sustainable futures for agriculture. It does replace two other programs that we had, so Sustainable Farming Fund and the Primary Growth Partnership. There's a little bit of a busy slide here. Try not to read it. I've highlighted some things in yellow, and the elements on the right are the key fund objectives, and they are to grow and share New Zealand's prosperity with the population, and especially with our producers. It's to support thriving, sustainable agriculture in the regions, and it's to transition to a more clean and green and carbon neutral New Zealand. And the elements under benefits there in the middle that you see highlighted in yellow are what we've pretty much just talked about. So I won't really go into any more about those. And just to touch on some examples from the Sustainable Food and Fibre Futures Fund, currently has around about 182 projects funded, about $3.6 million allocated, of which 45% comes from industry. And as it stands, currently is about another 106 applications being considered, with another 200 million. Examples here are the Apple and Pear New Zealand, aiming to develop, chemical and spray-free agriculture, or production of apples and pears. We have things like development of the dairy sheep industry with a different kind of milk production, more sustainable agriculture potentially in terms of their impact on the land, and a product which is very high value. enhancing our sustainable honey production. So New Zealand honey is world renowned, the Manuka honey. So it's trying to grow that in a sustainable fashion. Several joint projects, there's one here, which is Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Dairy New Zealand, Farmland and Farmers Weekly, jointly funding the reconnection of urban Kiwis with our land, food and farmers. And you probably find that in many countries that populations that live in the cities are losing touch with where their food comes from, and what happens on agricultural land and what farmers do. And so trying to build that connection again is quite valuable, especially in a country like New Zealand. Talked about developing Maori agribusiness and the work developing high-value pathways for export. So looking at not just conventional agriculture, but looking at some of our indigenous flora and fauna, and potentially looking at products from those. Example being honey is a good example of that. And information systems, on-farm data information systems. So Farm IQ was a previous project under the Primary Growth Partnership, which was very successful. So those are just some examples. Horticulture, just touch on a few things there. I mean, horticulture, in terms of productivity, some really good research done by the horticulture groups and research groups looking at, for example, with apples moving from what used to be 20 tonnes per hectare of production towards 180 tonnes per hectare of production. Just a great story in terms of improved productivity from the land and a sustainable high-value product. They're also focused on things like post-harvest loss and storage of fruit and vegetables to improve their shelf life, because again, we export the majority of our product overseas, so having good shelf life is really important. Focusing on using a lot of automation and robotics, especially for harvesting, and resistant crops, pest-resistant crops, so we can reduce agrochemical use, and developing value add and new varieties. And many of you will have probably had Kiwi Gold, kiwi fruit, and there's new kiwi varieties coming out like kiwi berries, and new varieties of apples, and rocket apples was a real success story in terms of a small apple that was more suitable for children for their school lunch boxes. So just some examples there. Okay, I will pass over to Dr. Callum Eastwood of Dairy New Zealand to talk about some productivity and sustainability in the dairy industry.
Thanks, Gary. How's my sound? Can you hear me all right?
Yep, you're all good.
That's good.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. I'm a senior scientist at Dairy NZ. Dairy NZ is a farmer levy paid organisation. Every dairy farmer in New Zealand put some money into our organisation, and we do research, development, extension, and policy, and various other things on their behalf. So, I'll flick to the next slide. I was just going to quickly run you through some things that we do here around productivity and sustainability. So, I just wanted to start off by talking a little bit about our the strategy that kind of guides our work in the dairy sector. So it's called the Dairy Tomorrow strategy. It was developed in about 2017 with all the dairy sector partners, and we have 6 main commitments within that dairy strategy. And I guess the first 2 there about protecting and nurturing the environment and building the world's most competitive and resilient dairy farming businesses is quite relevant to what you're talking about today. We're also looking at high quality nutrition, being world leading in animal care, creating great workplaces, and that's a lot of my work is in that space, and growing vibrant communities around our dairy farms. So I'll move on to the next one. So just wanted to give you a few examples of things we're doing to improve productivity and sustainability. So there's increasing use of precision agriculture in our dairy sector. So for the last 10 or 20 years, various forms of precision agriculture have been used. And I guess examples are sort of GPS-guided soil testing and soil mapping, recording, using GPS, recording where our fertiliser has been placed, so having GPS units on our fertiliser trucks, and so farmers can see and others can see where the fertiliser was actually applied, through to quite novel things around using nitrogen sensors on our fertiliser trucks to do on-the-go application of fertiliser based on kind of pasture demand. So using sensors like the crop set sensor there. A newer area of work is around regenerative agriculture. So in the last couple of years, and funded out of some of those programs like the NPI SFFF fund, we have several farmer-led programs looking at how can we use regen ag principles in our dairy systems, and that kind of applies to using diverse plant species in our pastures, looking after soil carbon and the soil in general, having a focus on nutrient management. But we're also looking at how does using regen ag affect the workplace, and does it actually make for a better workplace for people on farm when you're working with more diverse operations. Sorry, the slides have slipped on a bit there.
Yeah, I've just gone back again. That's my fault.
Yeah. And so, one of the other areas there is a lot of research into reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Obviously, all of agriculture globally is facing this challenge. So the dairy sector is doing a lot of work to how we might do that. But also farmers are acting now around reducing their nitrogen fertiliser inputs. We're helping them kind of know their numbers, know what their greenhouse gas and nitrogen emissions are, and using computer modelling, things like that, to help them adapt feed inputs and farm management to look to reduce greenhouse gases. And we're also doing work around environment and resource management on farm. So a lot of that is trying to protect our waterways and improve water quality. So that's around keeping stock out of waterways, and 98% of dairy farms have fenced off their waterways to keep stock out, and also managing our water resources. So use of more efficient irrigation like pivot irrigators and variable rate irrigation, and matching irrigation inputs to the upcoming weather and soil demand. So I'll go to the next one, Gary.
Yeah.
So final slide for me. Some of the other innovations being used by farmers here. So has been a big increase in interest in using what we call animal wearables or electronic halters. The sensors that collect data on animal activity and animal health to help you know when's the right time to for the cow to reproduce, or when might she be having trouble with health, mastitis, lameness, and things like that. So, and some really new innovations around virtual fencing. Also, farmers are starting to adopt virtual fencing in New Zealand. And the benefit of those devices is you can also collect information on what your animals are doing, or proof of practice around proving that you have good performance on your farm around animal welfare. But I've done a lot of work around trying to make milking more efficient. About half of a dairy farmer's day in New Zealand is spent milking. So every little bit helps around being more efficient. So a lot of farmers use rotary dairy platforms, which are quite efficient and use technologies such as automated cup removers, automated teat spray, automated drafting that helps you run those sheds with less people and more efficiently. And one thing I was going to add in there, so we've got automated drafting that we use as well, but another thing was just the use of digital devices on farm has really grown in the last 5 to 10 years, and just use of smartphone apps for health and safety and managing people, doing your payroll, and also collecting data and communicating amongst farm teams. So it's pretty commonplace on dairy farms nowadays. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Callum. Okay, so that's us. So I presume question and answers.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Jerry, Dr. Gary, and Dr. Callum. Thank you for your insightful and actually quite comprehensive presentation. I think it's quite interesting to both see the policy framework of New Zealand in supporting farmers and also in supporting the goals of achieving sustainable agriculture in general, as well as to see the practice on the ground of the dairy farms, as Dr. Cullen has succinctly pointed out. I would like to invite questions from the floor. I think
I see there's one in the chat around apple productivity or apple production from 20 tonnes per hectare to 180 tonnes per hectare. So I'm not sure of the exact amount at the moment, but I'm pretty confident that with the research that plant and food research are doing in New Zealand, they can get up to 120 tonnes per hectare already. And it's really structured around looking at how the trees grow and how to best grow them. And they almost grow them not like trees anymore, they almost grow them like grapevines, so that the majority of the exposed fruit gets sunlight. And so you get much better production per hectare because you're growing them more vertically and in more narrow fashion. So, you know, the goal of 180 tonnes per hectare, I think, is quite achievable because they're heading towards that now. So that's the approach there. And also probably new varieties as well that produce more fruit per tree.
all right, great. I think that helps to answer the question of Ms. Hayati. There's another question for Dr. Collum. Can you explain further how modeling is used to help the farmers to reduce the GHG emissions? This is the question from Nurul Atilia.
Yeah, so we generally use a model called Overseer in New Zealand, and it's just a model where farmers can put in their farm system inputs, and it essentially calculates outputs such as nutrients used by the plant and the nutrients that might be leached out of the system, and also greenhouse gas numbers. That's mostly how we do it at the moment.
All right. So I hope that sufficiently answered your questions, Ms. Nurul. So are there any more questions for our speakers from New Zealand at this point? Again, I would like to mention that all presentations will also be made available to all participants after the session. So if there are no more questions or comments that you would like to share at this stage, I would like to thank you, our Team New Zealand, once again, and thank you for tuning in quite late, quite in the evening in New Zealand time. But it is great to actually hear and learn from the practice of New Zealand that actually aligns, I think, with both the BCG model and also aligns with many of the ASEAN countries goal and policy framework in promoting sustainability in agricultural sector, not only to enhance productivity in the farms, but also to help support farmers in adding values to their product and help reduce the greenhouse gas emissions as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, from New Zealand, I would like to take you all quite literally across the world to Switzerland. We have two experts from Switzerland that join us this morning time in Switzerland. Thank you for your patience. I am aware that we are quite behind schedule right now, but thank you for your patience and waiting and be with us today. I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Achim Walter from ETH Zurich Institute for Agricultural Sciences, as well as Dr. Nadia El-Beni from Agroscope. Dr. Nadia El-Beni is also head of research area sustainability assessment and agricultural management. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over the floor to you, Professor Dr. Achim.
Thanks a lot, Yuangpan. Thanks a lot to all the organizers for having invited us and for giving us the opportunity to introduce you a little bit to the system, how agriculture is regulated, how agriculture is done in Switzerland, and especially what our views are to increasing sustainability, especially doing that with smart farming tools, with technology in a way. My colleague Nadia El-Beni and I have structured our presentation in such a way that we will first show you a short video that has been done by the Swiss Ministry of Agriculture to introduce international audiences to how agriculture is working in Switzerland, what our main structures are, and so on. And then I'll give a small highlight or a small focus on some of the facts that have already been mentioned in that video to prepare the ground for the talk of Nadia El-Beni, who will also start with a short video on one of our public-private partnerships that we have recently founded in Switzerland, the Swiss Future Farm, that shall explore how new technologies can foster sustainability in practical farming. And she will also give some more remarks after her film that she will show. Without further ado, I'd like to ask the presenters to start the first video that we have provided.
We enjoy our food. For that, we can thank our agriculture and food sector. In Switzerland, an alpine country, around a third of the total area can be utilized for agriculture. Compared to other countries, that may not seem much, but there's still room for diversity in agricultural production, not least because our farmers are well trained and because great importance is attached to research and innovation. Grasslands make up over 2/3 of the utilized agricultural area. That's important for the diet of our cattle, the source of traditional, high-quality dairy products. But meadows and pastures are also vital for meat production. Arable farming is concentrated in the Central Plateau. The crops produced here include bread and fodder cereals, potatoes and maize. But increasingly, crops that have been somewhat neglected, such as rye, peas or oats, are now also being sown or planted again. In addition, a relatively small area is used for specialty crops, such as grapevines, fruit or vegetables. The diversity of agricultural production has been continuously developing in recent years and adapting to the requirements of society. International trade is essential. In order to produce agricultural goods, Switzerland has to import, for example, seeds and feedstuffs. Food is imported too, as Switzerland's natural resources are not sufficient to feed the entire population. At the same time, Swiss products are in great demand abroad, with Swiss cheese being a perfect example. What all Swiss products have in common are high quality and high production standards. Since 1996, production in Switzerland has been subject to basic requirements in the form of proof of ecological performance. The production base has to be carefully managed through effective, safe, and sustainable use of inputs. Innovative technologies and digitalization can be used to address the challenges facing Swiss agriculture. For example, drones and robots facilitate sustainable production, helping to protect the environment and enhance biodiversity. In Switzerland, 1 in 10 jobs are linked to the agri-food sector. But not all the work is done in the stable or field. Many farmers also rely on other activities, such as energy production, tourism, or direct sales. Here, farmers have to meet difficult challenges: producing high-quality foods, protecting the environment, and obtaining a secure income. Switzerland's agriculture and food sector spares no effort so that we can all enjoy our food.
Thanks a lot to Angpon for screening that video. If you want, you can now start with the first slide of my presentation, in which I wanted to show you the outline of Switzerland. That's the other presentation. That's the one you will see in a few minutes. So the building behind me is ETH Zurich. That's the university in which I'm employed as a basic researcher. I hope that that it's possible to start. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the right presentation. Also with this picture of ETH in the middle and with Switzerland on the top. So Switzerland is a very small country in the middle of Europe. We don't have any access to the sea, but we have a lot of fresh water, a lot of mountains, as you can see in the picture. This is a kind of a typical scenery in the landscape of Switzerland. And because we are doing farming directly next to our freshwater, to our drinking water reserves, it has already become obvious in the 1980s that Switzerland has to take care really seriously about sustainability, about how to do agriculture in the way that was alluded to in the Thai presentation of the young, motivated company leader, that we do it in a way that does not work with too many agrochemicals. So if you go to the next slide, please, there I have collected some of the facts, some of them that you have heard in the video, so that after this afternoon you can have material in written form. So on the left-hand side you see how agriculture is distributed in Switzerland. On the small acreage that we have for agriculture, about 70% are for meadows, and only about 1/3 is done for arable crops, mostly cereals, mostly wheat. On the right-hand side, next to the image of that lovely cow in front of the mountains, you see some of the core facts that I just want to remind you again. We have about 50,000 farms in Switzerland. This is not a lot. And the average size is very, very small. It's only 21 hectares on an average farm. The farms are still practically all family run. They are doing, as you see in point number 3, mostly producing cows. 70% of the farmland are meadows. But since we are aware that we need to do this as clean as possible, so to say, the share of organic farming in Switzerland is very high, with about 15% of the farmland and 15% of the farms doing formalized organic farming. The other fact I'd like you to take home from my talk is that we are investing a lot of money into the education of farmers, into the education of the farming systems, into getting to know each other and to talk with each other on the same eye height. So we have an intensive farming school system where about 1,000 farming apprentices finish each year. This is more or less enough to sustain the number of farms in Switzerland. Of course, the production of milk products, meat is very important and is taught in these schools. Bread wheat as the most important crop is also taught extensively. Vegetables that are produced in Switzerland are mostly field grown. On about 13,000 hectares, the acreage is increasing in Switzerland. There is a strong trend towards vegan food bases, or at least plant-based food basing, although we have this tradition, this strong tradition in dairy production. The country is small, as I said, and consists of a lot of nice mountains on which you cannot do agriculture. So the self-sufficiency degree in Switzerland is quite low. It's only about 50 to 60% of the food that we can produce in our own country. And we have the aspiration to have a diverse source of our food. So this causes a lot of difficulties, but is also the motor for innovation. About 12% of the income is spent on food in Switzerland. About 3.7 billion Swiss francs are spent for subsidies, a very important fact. So since about 2000, this amount of money stayed constant, but it means that all of the farms in Switzerland can only survive economically by receiving subsidies. The average income per farm is about 100,000 Swiss francs per year. And as alluded to in the video, about a third of that income is not coming from agriculture directly, but from tourism or from direct sales or so on. And just to have the numbers right, of about the 8.6 million inhabitants in Switzerland, with about 5.2 million working people, about 10%, 550,000, are in the global food sector somehow, and only about 3% really work on farms still, but it's at least 3%. If you can go to the next slide, then you see that Switzerland is not only on farming with traditional agriculture, but Switzerland is also a high-tech country. We are one of the hubs worldwide in developing sensing technology. On the top right picture element, you see a red drone that is produced by a startup in Switzerland, by Wingtra, that can cover with pictures high areas in agriculture, but also for other purposes. You see another drone, that's a Chinese drone, a DJI drone, but equipped with a sensor pack that's from the research topics of my group, where we are doing sensing with thermal cameras, with normal RGB cameras for breeding purposes in crops, like in the wheat breeding field that you see here. But we also have a lot of young, innovative people that construct their own robots, that are creating startups for robots that can either kill weeds by lasering them out or autonomously navigating through fields. And I think it's very promising with our high quality of engineering research, of engineering training, that agriculture will become more sustainable, and precision agriculture will also get boosted by the innovations that are done in Switzerland and in other countries. Very important points number 2 and 3 on this slide. We need to have high environmental standards, as alluded to in the first slide. And in point 3, you see that for us it's very important for the further development of sustainable agriculture to put a strong focus on the Swiss agricultural knowledge system. And what that means, you will see in my next and last slide. So we are turning more and more toward from production to sustainable food systems. And we are doing that on several levels. Sorry for a lot of text on the slide, but I thought I give you this text also for taking it home with you and maybe reflecting about it. So Switzerland politically is organized in 3 levels: in the federal governance level, in the cantonal level, and in a smaller regional level. On the federal level, Switzerland makes sure, by fostering world-class research at ETH Zurich with 200 staff in agricultural research, that we can really think about research topics of relevance for sustainable agriculture. You have seen one picture of my image-based research, but there are also a lot of topics for ecology. Then there is Agroscope. That's the Federal Research Institute that Nadia will introduce you in more detail, with 1,000 staff members, 17 research areas in which farmers and researchers work together very directly. And then on the cantonal level, I'd like to point out the importance of the agricultural schools for the dual education system, point number 4, in which everyone who wants to run a farm later on needs to have school systems for 3 years, but also needs to work on a farm. So the education is both done theoretically and practically. Then we have a lot of private players, a lot of research done in organic agriculture, also by private players. And the very important element, number 6, the proof of ecological performance. This, so to say, policy measure makes sure that farms only receive subsidies if they adhere to ecological criteria, on crop rotation. Crop rotation is mandatory in Switzerland, also to animal welfare and soil protection. There are even higher environmental standards to which about a third of the farms adhere, and the organic agriculture criteria to which about 7,500 farms adhere. And finally, the precision agriculture, smart farming issue is gaining more and more importance in Switzerland, both in education and in practice. But at the moment, we don't see a lot of formal precision agriculture because the fields are so small and the devices that are on the market would not economically be valuable in Switzerland. But we are developing our because of the need to do more bio-based farming, so to say. The sensing technology that is developed in Switzerland will become more important in the near future. With that, I'd like to hand over to Nadia for her elaborations on the Swiss Future Farm and on the research done in Agroscope.
Yes, thank you very much, Achim. Thank you very much also for inviting me to this very interesting webinar. It is an honor, and I'm pleased to be able to briefly present you how Agroscope is doing research in the field of smart farming. So Agroscope is the Competence Center of Agricultural Research of the Swiss Confederation with about 1,000 employees, as Achim already told. And the research topics relate to plant production, animal production, health, social science, and technology. My name is Nadia Elbeni. I'm member of the executive board of Agroscope and head of the research division Sustainability Assessment and Agricultural Management, and my background is agricultural economist. In the following few minutes, I would like to give you some insights into our smart farming research at Agroscope. I will not show results of any specific project, but will show you how we organize ourselves with our partners to advance the research, knowledge, and application of smart farming technologies in Swiss agriculture. And therefore, I would like to show you a video and would be happy if someone could share the video for the first part of the presentation.
Welcome to the Swiss Future Farm in Tannikon, a special project in the area of digital farming which is run by 3 different parties. We wish to implement digital farming management on a one-to-one basis and thus make it visible, tangible and comprehensible for the farmers. With intelligent and time-saving solutions, we make it simpler for farmers to handle the increasing workload in recording and accounting. It is also an opportunity to spread the findings acquired here on the Swiss Future Farm to a greater number of interested parties. And for ACCO, it's important the possibility of applying the results in the development of new products and services. And this is how the responsibilities are divided. The Cantonal Training and Advisory Center Arenenberg, as central regional communicator of expert knowledge, manages the infrastructure of the SFF, ensures on the digital level the consistency of the data flow and performs evaluations. The ACCO Corporation, as an agricultural machinery manufacturer operating worldwide, supplies through its development departments hardware and software-based solutions for the application needs of the SFF. The GVS Agrar AG, as the leading importer in Switzerland of agricultural machinery, establishes and maintains the machine park. In practice, the data management works as follows. Digital and analog data banks from existing farm surveys and the SFF, specific project data are prepared by the staff of the BBZ Arenenberg. These are transferred to a central farm management software and made available for real-time applications. The data pools now available on a mobile basis can be used direct on site, for example, when sowing. For open questions regarding the use of new technologies, the people from GEFA Agrar can be on hand for advice and ensure the continuous functioning efficiency of the devices and machines. The data newly registered in the workout in the crops are directed from the mobile units back to the stationary computers, where they are evaluated. If needed, specialists carry out optimizations to the hardware and software. In providing solutions for daily tasks, the Swiss Future Farm receives support from ACCO with their developers here in Marktoberdorf. The findings from the trials are of great value for all three partners and, of course, for the farmers. The developments and findings obtained are processed in Tennikon and at the Arenenberg in forums and workshops. It is important for us to be able to use these to the fullest extent in school and counseling. Through the practical application on the Swiss Future Farm of technologies available on the market, we wish to make the advantages of digital agriculture more tangible. But for me, what is most important is the fact that this project is ultimately of benefit to the farmers.
So yes, now you know the public-private partnership Swiss Future Farm. We can use also at Agroscope for our research, and I would like to go now on with the presentation. So as you saw in the video, the Swiss Future Farm is doing research and development, demonstration and education, and contributes to the enhancement of knowledge on smart farming technologies by co-creation activities. Maybe coming to the first slide, I would like to show you how we are organized. So you may have noticed that Agroscope is not directly involved in the PPP. And this is because we want to avoid conflicts of interest. So in our different research projects, we are using technologies of different technology providers and also want to signal this to all possible partners by not holding an agreement with only one or two specific technology partners. And from a political perspective, this was a very important decision to ensure the independence and credibility of the research of Agroscope. Instead of being partner of the public-private partnership, we hold a collaboration agreement with the Canton of Thurgau that manages the farm and supports us with our research trials. So now coming to the next slide, while the Swiss Future Farm is a very important pilot farm for Agroscope's research on digital technologies, because we can test and further develop technologies and digitalized production processes that are not yet fully developed for on-farm use, we still have a challenge, and this challenge is that we are still not going on the market. So to develop the technologies to market maturity is still a real challenge for us. And for this, it is to do so, it is really important for us to test the practicability of the technologies and digitalized production processes on real farms. And that's why we have launched the so-called experimental station Smart Technology, together with the Canton Thurgau and Canton Schaffhausen and the Swiss Agricultural Extension Center, Agridea. And with these partners, Agroscope holds a collaboration agreement. And the purpose of this experimental station is to apply and optimize new technologies and production processes under practical conditions. So we would like to improve the impact of agricultural production on natural resources and animal health. We would like to simplify and improve farm management by using a farm management information system, as you saw in the video, for instance. And we really have the goal to promote exchange and co-creation between research, extension, practice, and industry. So the experimental station is about bridging the gap between research and practice, and the research is done together with the public and private partners, for instance, ETH Zurich. And then if we have developed this project or have developed it in research, the next step is to test and further develop these new technologies on practical farms. And this work is done together with different technology partners, the industry, farm managers, agricultural schools, and extension services of the cantonal partners and Agridea. And this network of practical farms is recruited by the cantons. This is the idea of this experimental station. So now coming to the third and last slide. It's like an overview slide. If we put everything together, we have the Swiss Future Farm as a pilot experimental farm, and we have a network of practical farms in the two cantons by the experimental station Smart Technology. One example of a running project is the site-specific fertilizer application. We there, during a 3 years PhD project together with Achim Walter from ETH, we have developed a digitalized process to apply nitrogen fertilizer site-specifically depending on the needs of the plants and the nutrient content in the soil. And the development of this process took place on the Swiss Future Farm. And now in the second step, we upscale the development process on practical farms in the experimental station. So this year, we are working together with 3 farms and the next 2 years with 10 farms. And the goal is to adapt the method developed on the Swiss Future Farm to the specific needs of the farms, with some farms being very digitalized and others less. And based on these findings, the Swiss Agricultural Extension Center, Agridea, is developing training material that can be used in the agricultural schools of the cantons and in extension services. And of course, we also use these collaborations with the partners in the eastern part of Switzerland, also to apply and test research results from our other sites of Agroscope. So to give one example, knowledge from the Agroscope site Changea in the western part of Switzerland is transferred to the Swiss Future Farm via our Agroscope research program Indicate, which is shown here at the bottom right-hand side. And the goal of Indicate is to develop indicators for positive and negative farm environmental impacts and use digital technologies, so get these indicators into a farm management information system to support farmers in easily identifying and optimizing the ecological services of their farms. And this is really about biodiversity improvement, about getting knowledge on the soil status and soil management, also the plot level, nutrient flows, grassland ecosystem services, and the integration of agri-environmental monitoring. And these indicators are either developed directly on the Swiss Future Farm, or researchers from other sites of Agroscope apply their developed indicators on the Swiss Future Farm. And if these indicators work well, we then go into the network of practical farms in the experimental station, Smart Technologies. And one aspect I also wanted to highlight is shown at the bottom left-hand side, is that Agroscope is also involved in the so-called Charter for the Digitalization of the Swiss Agricultural and Food Sector. And this charter was launched in 2018 by the Federal Office for Agriculture, with the aim to further develop the digitalization of the Swiss agricultural and food sector and to exploit the potential in the interests of all stakeholders. And by the end of 2021, it had been signed by more than 120 institutions in the industrial, agricultural, processing, retail, and administrative sectors, who thereby undertook to make an active contribution to the digitalization in Swiss agriculture. And this really brings together all important stakeholders. And so we at Agroscope are not only active in research, but also gain insights into the administrative processes and activities of the private sector, which is very helpful for our own activities. And so we are 15 minutes after time, and I would like to end my presentation here and are open to questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, both Dr. Achim and Dr. Nadia. I think it's pretty interesting to see how the model of Switzerland, although you have such a small areas for agriculture, but also still achieve quite a high productivity in the country using high technology and advanced innovation. And I think the Swiss Future Farm has done an incredibly amazing job in bridging the gaps between knowledge and also practical implication or implementation of those technologies and knowledge in order to bring research into play on the field in Switzerland. So I would like to now open the floor for questions. I think we have a very interesting question from Ms. Anna Itkin, who would like to kind of open a debate around the system of agricultural production in general. And I think this question can very well go not only to Switzerland, but also to all participants, if anyone would like to chip in or exchange ideas. I think she mentioned that our system, the way our system functions nowadays, both in terms of policy framework and policy implementation, is clearly dysfunctional in the way that it doesn't allow people who grow food or farmers to make proper living from it. And what are some of the systemic changes do you think are needed in order to restructure the food systems to allow effective, nutritious food production, ensuring good earnings for farmers, as well as to prevent food waste along the value chain? I would like to maybe start by asking our Switzerland team first. I know that this is quite a very general question, and it probably has to do more with the policy framework of each country in implementing these policy to both support the farmers and also to ensure sustainability along the supply chain. But perhaps would you have any ideas or perhaps your experiences on how the policy framework of Switzerland help in supporting the farmers, especially the small scale farmers, to ensure that they earn decent income and also to ensure the sustainability in their practices?
So I don't know, Achim, do you want to start or?
Ladies first, if ladies want.
Okay.
Depending on you.
Maybe to the political system. So Switzerland, compared to the European Union, for instance, is very much a front, or still a front with agri-environmental payments. So we have different schemes paying farmers not only for food production, but also for the provision of environmental services like biodiversity, for instance. I think this is a quite important part. And as Achim presented you, is the subsidy system. They are very highly subsidized in Switzerland, the farmers. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, the political system stuck also like in the European Union. So we have really big discussions now between farmers and policy, because of course now also the Ukraine crisis leads to the wish to produce more food, and it's very difficult to not lose the environmental services again. Maybe in Switzerland, what I can tell, it's that not only policy is very important, but also private market actors. Mm-hmm. So we have organizations which really go beyond current political systems by applying standards and get farmers into the standards, pay farmers more by a price premium for their products because they're environmental friendly. And I think this is really something which is much easier for the private sector than the policy sector at the moment to go forward, that it's being sustainably in all senses. So not only from the environmental, but also the economic and social perspective.
I completely agree to what Nadia has said. Maybe one additional aspect. We elaborated on the situation of Switzerland. Of course, across the globe, there are very different situations that are addressed by the question of Anna Itkin. Maybe one lesson learned from Switzerland is that we try, although we are a small country, to keep our domestic production relatively high, to make sure that we produce the goods that are really demanded in the own country. And maybe this is also something of importance. The subsidy system that you have briefly seen from Switzerland cannot be implemented in a country that is not of a similar wealth as Switzerland. That is clear. But for less wealthy countries in which the major problems are with hunger and with farmers who cannot even sustain their own living, I think it is crucial to make sure that the products from which people live are produced within the country. This has implications on global trade, of course, I know. But this is, I think, a step that is required when we turn away from global production systems to food systems that make sure that sustainability, also with a social dimension, is possible to be practiced in each country.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
New Zealand? Yeah. So New Zealand is probably a little unique in the world in the sense that the whole country is almost a large garden, and we've been doing agriculture for 180 years here, and initially driven to supply the UK with food, but then our internal drivers have always been outward looking in terms of export. So in fact, our farmers generally make very good incomes and very good earnings from agriculture. But probably that's because it is largely an export industry. We are different in the sense that we provide very little subsidy for farmers, but that wasn't always the case. So prior to the 1980s, we did subsidise farming very heavily, and what we found in our environment was that drove a lack of innovation, and farmers farmed the subsidies as opposed to innovating and developing their livelihoods and agriculture. And so when we removed subsidies, it really changed the dynamics. Some farmers did go out of business, but what we find in New Zealand is farmers are very adaptable and very innovative if they are put in a situation where they can be innovative. And since then, you'll find now that no farmers want to go back to a situation of being subsidised. They want the opportunity to do the best agriculture they can and earn the most from their land that they can. So you know, I think the other thing too is initially our agriculture was largely driven by farmer cooperatives. So farmers determined their own futures through their cooperatives. It's not quite the same anymore, although our largest dairy cooperative is Fonterra. But yeah, so that did shape the way farmers worked, because they saw that they could control the opportunities that they had by owning the whole value chain from farm through to product, through to selling that product. So that is something to think about as well. I had a few other things scribbled down, but I think that will be enough at this stage.
Yes, I think both of you has raised very quite interesting and important points. I do understand and agree with Dr. Nadia as well that not only policy framework is important, but also the public-private partnerships and also the inclusivity in involving all players of the society into the policy designs and also implementation is very important. For example, the problem of food waste is not only tackled by policy alone, but also, you know, society, civil society, and also people on the ground has to be involved and participated as well. And in New Zealand case, I do agree that you know, capacity building for farmers is something that we definitely cannot overlook. Not only that subsidies help, and it probably helps in the beginning, but in the long run, we have to empower farmers to be able to adapt and innovate themselves throughout the value chains. I would like to perhaps invite any other comments or exchange from the grounds, from the floor.
Can I just add one more point to that as well? In our agricultural sectors, we actually involve the producers extensively in problem solving. So whether it's research or whatever it might be, or developing the industry or growing the industry, even Fit for a Better World was the primary sector council, which is farmers and producers. We involve them in determining what are the problems and challenges, and then they contribute to what the solutions are. So that is also quite significant in terms of helping them direct their agriculture and their livelihoods.
Right. So yeah, I think that's quite important as well. Perhaps just kind of a quick question. Have you ever encountered any resistance from farmers when you introduce new technology and innovation into the farms? Because I know that sometimes, farmers or actually anyone would be quite stuck to their the ways of doing things, the traditional ways that they've been doing for a long time. So innovation and technologies might not sit well with them in the beginning. Have you encountered these challenges, and how do you solve that?
Yes, farmers sometimes don't understand what the opportunity is, the way it's presented to them, often from researchers. You get this comment from researchers sometimes, but we've solved all that problems. Why aren't they taking it up? It's because they either don't quite understand it in the context of how they use it, or the language isn't right for them, and so on. And I think that is, again, engaging them in that discussion around initially what the problem is and then what the solutions are. And putting it in a form that they understand. So a lot of times, I'll take the dairy example, extension and bringing in new ideas. We find farmers who are leaders in the area who adopt a new technology, and we use those farmers to teach other farmers. I think you saw in the video where the farmer said, farmers listen to farmers. Farmers don't listen to researchers. They don't listen to policy people. They listen to farmers. So if their neighbour has adopted something which is new and getting him more benefit at the bottom line, then he's more likely to adopt that himself or herself.
How about in Switzerland?
Maybe I can add to this. What we observe is that children are also very good part of the game, and introducing parents and help parents to get to know the technologies, because they learn it in school. They are very interested. They look watch a lot of videos and would like to try out. And I think this is also a very good way to introduce technologies on farms.
Right, great. I think that's definitely one of the examples that we from ASEAN can learn from. So I think we have had a very, very informative, very comprehensive information from both Switzerland and New Zealand in introducing your practices and examples, not only in terms of the policy framework and formulation, but also how we can implement and push forward those policies into real practices. Now, I think the benefits of today's webinar lies not only in sharing these practices and experience and lessons learned, but also in opening doors to further cooperation between ASEAN and Switzerland and New Zealand as well, because as we have seen, our policies are not that different, and we do share a lot of similarities and goals and objectives in each of our policies framework. Now, today in closing, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Mr. Jirachai Pankrasin, Executive Director of the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue, to talk to give a little bit of closing remarks in forging partnership between ASEAN, New Zealand, Switzerland in sustainable development and sustainable agriculture. Please, Ambassador Jirachai.
Thank you very much, and very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you to all the speakers today for your very informative presentation on our common endeavor on how to achieve sustainable agriculture. I think one of the key message that I took from today's was that there is certainly a need for change in the agricultural sector. and that underlying all the presentations we had today is this great challenge that we all face on how to provide for global food security in a sustainable manner so that we can provide for today's need as well as those of future generations. Now, according to the UN, by 2050, the world's population will be 9.7 billion. This will create a huge demand for food production. While we know that conventional agricultural practices have an enormous environmental footprint and play a significant role in climate change. It is very clear that we cannot continue in this way, and the world needs to transform its farming methods and practices in ways that will make it economically viable, yet environmentally sound. The way forward would seem to be in innovation and technology. We have seen from today's presentations that innovation and technology will be the key to bringing about the changes that will mitigate the harmful effects of farming on the environment, and it will also help to develop smart farms of the future so that they are not only more efficient and productive, but also help to protect the environment. So we need to promote these changes. And in order to do so, we need to forge partnerships at all levels, at the local and community level, so that everyone is working together to foster cooperations at all points along the value chain, so that everyone is working together to transform the agricultural sector. At the national and regional level, we need to forge partnerships amongst governments and countries to work together to share knowledge, best practices, and lessons learned to help each other achieve their sustainability goals. And this is where the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue is trying to promote these partnerships, both within ASEAN and between ASEAN and our external partners like Switzerland and New Zealand, so that we can all learn from each other and share in the knowledge that we have developed. Finally, let me take this opportunity to say on behalf of the co-hosts, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, the ASEAN Network for Bio, Circular and Green Economy, and the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development and Studies and Dialogue, that we would like to express our appreciations to all the speakers, Dr. Pong Thai from the Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives, Kunmit Danai from Chlorofields and SV Groups, our friends from New Zealand, Dr. Jeremy Smith, Dr. Callum Eastwood, and of course, Dr. Gary Odie, for their very important and informative perspectives from New Zealand. And of course, finally, to Professor Dr. Achim Walter from ETH Zurich and Dr. Nadia Albeni from Aeroscope for sharing with us your perspective from Switzerland. And finally, of course, a big thank you to the audience who have been with us this whole afternoon. We hope that you will continue to join us for the next session of the ASEAN BCG Knowledge Sharing Series, which will be announced in due course. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Jirashai. And as Ambassador mentioned, I hope this webinar has, in a small way, inspired us to work together and find new pathways and collaboration in support of a sustainable ASEAN community. Please stay tuned for our next series, which will focus on renewable energy. You can also follow the news of our next series session through our Facebook page at ASEAN Thailand or through our partners' channels for more details as well. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I wish our ASEAN colleagues a very pleasant evening and a very good night in New Zealand and also a very good day in Switzerland. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. สวัสดีค่ะ